There is a strange kind of poverty that nobody talks about. Not the poverty of money. The poverty of time felt deeply. The poverty of a quiet morning. The poverty of doing one thing without already thinking of the next. We have full calendars, full inboxes, full camera rolls, full minds. And somehow, life feels thin. We move faster than any generation before us, but many people feel like they are barely arriving anywhere. A day begins, and before we have even looked out the window, we have already touched the world through a screen. Messages, news, work, noise, someone else's opinion before our own first thought. We call this being alive. But are we really? Perhaps we are not living faster because life demands it. Perhaps we are living faster because we have forgotten there is another way. A slower way, an active yet more fulfilling way. Not aesthetic nonsense with a linen shirt and a bowl of figs, but slow in the old sense. Attentive, deliberate, rooted, human. Like people used to in the days before screens sticking out of our pockets and eyes hypnotized by constant buzz. For most of history, life was not optimized. A person could not summon food, music, gossip, arguments, and strangers' faces from a glass rectangle. Waiting was built into the architecture of existence. You waited for bread to rise. You waited for letters to arrive. You waited for seasons to change. You waited for water to boil, for wool to dry, for a field to grow, for a train to come. And this waiting was not always romantic. History was not a cottagecore picnic. Life was harder. Work was physical. Illness was cruel. Comfort was rare. But people were not constantly torn away from the present. A craftsman did not make a chair while checking 12 other chairs. A monk did not copy a manuscript while refreshing the opinions of strangers. A farmer did not plant seeds while listening to a podcast about becoming a more efficient farmer. There was hardship, yes, but there was also contact. Contact with materials, with weather, with silence, with the body, with the fact that some things simply take time. Speed does not only change what we do, it changes what we can notice. When everything moves quickly, the mind becomes a poor witness. It starts to skim life. It looks, but does not see. It hears, but does not listen. It consumes, but does not digest. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "Our life is frittered away by detail. Simplify, simplify." That line is almost 200 years old, which is mildly embarrassing for us. Thoreau was complaining before email, group chats, TikTok, algorithmic feeds, open tabs, and the tiny red badges that now stalk the modern soul like unpaid debts. But he understood the essential problem. Life does not only become heavy because of great tragedies, it becomes heavy because of too many small demands, too many trivial affairs, too many interruptions pretending to be urgent. At some point, the mind stops living. It starts managing, and that is when burnout begins. Not when you are doing too much meaningful work, but when your attention is scattered across too many meaningless things. Some cultures have preserved small forms of resistance. In Japan, there is the idea of ma, the pause, the interval, the space between things. It appears in architecture, music, conversation, and art. The empty space is not wasted. It allows the thing itself to breathe. In Denmark, people speak of hygge, not simply coziness, as it is often sold online, but a warm atmosphere, ordinary comfort, and presence with others. In Italy, there is the phrase dolce far niente, the sweetness of doing nothing. And in 1986, when a fast food restaurant opened near the Spanish Steps in Rome, a protest helped spark what became the slow food movement, a defense of local food, tradition, and eating as something more than refueling before returning to the machine. Different places, different languages, same quiet suspicion that a life constantly accelerated is not necessarily a life improved, that stillness is not emptiness, that doing less can sometimes return us to what matters more. One of the great mistakes of modern life is that we confuse leisure with entertainment. Entertainment fills the silence. Leisure restores the person. Entertainment distracts you from exhaustion. Leisure asks why you are exhausted in the first place. The philosopher Joseph Pieper wrote, "Leisure is a form of silence." That is a difficult sentence now, because many people are terrified of silence. Not dramatic silence, just ordinary silence. A room without a video playing, a walk without headphones, a meal without checking something, a night where you do not immediately sedate your mind with noise. Silence feels uncomfortable at first because it reveals the state we are in, the scattered thoughts, the unfinished grief, the boredom, the cravings, the strange fatigue of always being available. But if you stay there long enough, silence stops accusing you. It begins to repair you. One of the simplest ways to relearn slowness is walking. Not walking as exercise. Not walking to count steps on a watch. Not walking while turning self-improvement into a spreadsheet with shoes. Just walking. Rebecca Solnit wrote that modern life may be moving faster than the speed of thought. That is the problem exactly. The body has a rhythm. The mind has a rhythm. Grief has a rhythm. Creativity has a rhythm. Healing has a rhythm. But the digital world has no rhythm. It has refresh. It has next. It has more. Walking returns us to a human tempo. You move, but not too fast. You think, but not too hard. You observe without needing to capture. A street becomes a street again. A tree becomes a tree again. Your own thoughts begin to sound less like emergency alerts and more like weather passing through. So that is what I would like you to do today. Just walk. For 10 minutes. For 20 minutes. For an hour. Walk without distractions. Walk and let the mind be free again as the legs move. Burnout is not only caused by work. It is caused by a life where nothing is allowed to be enough. You finish one task and immediately meet another. You rest, but feel guilty for resting. You achieve something, and by evening it already feels old. You're told to optimize your morning, your diet, your sleep, your reading, your exercise, your relationships, your face, your brand, your future. Even peace becomes another project, and the self becomes a tired little factory manager, forever improving the machinery. This is why living slowly cannot just mean lighting a candle. A candle is nice, but a candle cannot save you if your entire life is arranged around permanent self-extraction. Slowness is not decoration. It is refusal. Refusing to let every hour become useful. Refusing to turn every hobby into content. Refusing to make your nervous system pay rent to the internet. Refusing to confuse urgency with importance. The lost art of living slowly is not about nostalgia. The past was not pure, and the present is not doomed. But somewhere along the way, speed became a moral virtue. Busyness became proof of worth. Exhaustion became a personality, and stillness began to look suspicious. But the soul does not grow by being rushed. Attention does not deepen under threat. A meaningful life is not built only from intensity. It is built from return. Returning to the page, returning to the table, returning to the walk, returning to the body, returning to the people in front of you, returning to the small, ordinary moments that never shouted for your attention, but were quietly holding your life together. So live slowly. Not because the world is gentle, but because it is not. Not because time is infinite, but because it is not. And not because slowness will make life perfect. It won't. but it may make life visible again, and that is where becoming begins. If this video stayed with you, subscribe to Atlas of Becoming. This channel is for people trying to live with more depth in a world that keeps dragging them toward the surface. And if your exhaustion does not come from laziness, but from being constantly available, constantly useful, constantly on, then watch the next video. Because next, we'll talk about burnout at work. Not the cute version with candles and a weekend reset. The real one. The kind that makes you feel like your life has been quietly replaced by obligations. And we will figure out together how you can escape and rebuild your inner self.